Tonight is Psalms of Sadness. I'm really, well, hopefully I'm doing 3 of these, 13, 6, and 88. We had 17 listed, but I did not include that in my presentation. So with Psalms of Sadness, I would say until recently, I just had a tendency to skip over the Psalms of Sadness or Lament. So I generally consider myself a cheery, optimistic person, and these Psalms just were not speaking my language. So I like Psalm 100, make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all the earth, or Psalm 19, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. These are my Psalms. I'm drawn to Psalm 119, which we looked at, I guess that was last week, in the 176 verses on the love of God's law. I enjoy that. I like the historical Psalms. When we went through all the stories, what is all this? This is the stuff that really speaks to me, but I just didn't have a place for the Psalms of Lament. So I guess this started to change in 2019. At that point, I was a part of the Mosaic group at North Avenue, and we were reading Be the Bridge. And one of the chapters was on lament and learning to weep with those who weep, from the idea from Romans 12:15. And around that time, I also started using a daily devotional that cycled through the Psalms. And one of the things in the devotional that it talked about was, even if you're not personally feeling whatever the psalm is saying, whether it's sadness or joy, if that is not your feeling, you can pray for those who are in this time of sadness, or, so it's kind of, so I started, a little bit getting more into understanding lament, but it was still mostly external. It still wasn't an internal lament. It wasn't my language. But as you've heard, 2021 has been quite a year for our family, starting with Steve's mom being hospitalized 5 times in January, then coming to live with us. And we had times of joy when she was improving, and we were rejoicing in April when she and my father-in-law returned to assisted living. Not that we were trying to get rid of them, but that they were at the stage where, they were capable of living there on their own. And we celebrated my dad's 100th birthday. But then when I came back, things started going down again. And Steve's mom had gone back in the hospital, and then she ended up passing away. I guess that was the end of July. And then my dad started going downhill, and he's in hospice. And then my mom fell twice. First time she cracked her kneecap. Second time she broke her femur, and she's in a bad state right now. So, it's like, okay, maybe this is time where I really do have to call out to God, because what else can I do? And many of you have heard, to top it all off, Sunday we learned that Steve's oldest brother had passed away. So it's just, thing after thing after thing. And lament has become more of my language. I had prepared most of this lesson on Saturday before we heard about Steve's brother. And I was already going through some of these words of the Psalms of Lament, and then there was more. And so, I did already have these words. They were right there. So I unfortunately have learned to understand the need for these Psalms of Lament. So I'm just going to start with a couple quotes from Mark Vrogop, I think that's how you pronounce his name. So I read 2 books by him. I read one of his two books, sorry. The book that I read is Weep With Me, How Lament Opens the Door for Racial Reconciliation. So I had read that one a couple of years ago. He had an earlier book, Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy, Discovering the Grace of Lament. This quote is actually from an article that was, I forget where it was published, but I have a link to it. But lament is a prayer in pain that leads to trust. It is not only how Christians grieve, it's the way Christians praise God through their sorrows. Lament is a pathway to praise when life gets hard. So I really, I don't know, I really liked this. And when we look at the kind of most of the lament psalms, we'll see the structure, but they start in pain, but then they turn to the trust in God. And that's what we really need to remember, that yes, we can cry out to God, but we need to remember God through this. The second quote I have from him is from Dark Clouds, Deep Mercy. Lament is how we bring our sorrow to God. Without lament, we won't know how to process pain. Silence, bitterness, and even anger can dominate our spiritual lives instead. Without lament, we won't know how to help people walking through sorrow. Instead, we'll offer trite solutions, unhelpful comments, or impatient responses. What's more, without this sacred song of sorrow, we'll miss the lessons historic laments are intended to teach us. Anyone want to comment on either of these quotes before we move on?
Elizabeth, it's Anne. I would say that the part here on this quote that really speaks to me is that silence, bitterness, and even anger can dominate our spiritual lives instead of processing the pain. And I've witnessed that. I've experienced that. When you're just dumbfounded and don't know, it feels like the weight of the world is on you, and there's lots of sadness because of various types of events. But going silent, so being out of communication with other people to the point that, and to some extent having that voice in your head, pound it into you that this is awful and this shouldn't be. That leads to bitterness, and or anger either precedes it or follows or stays. But it's a tough place to be stuck.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I would say too, just in some past studies of lament, that how it's linked to suffering, and that it says here that discovering the grace of lament, I would also call it a discipline, a spiritual discipline, okay. Or that you could call it that also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my natural response is to just kind of close myself away. And I know just with 3 weeks ago when my mom fell, I was spending time in the hospital, but I had trouble going to God, going to the Bible. I think I shared this last week. The thing that I found that I was able to do was this verse locker, where I'm trying to memorize scripture on my phone. And because it was a distraction, but I was, I'm in the Word, but it's a distraction at the same time. And so that was the only way I was able to process stuff. So now I have a couple of quotes from David Taylor from Up and Afraid. Here in the Psalms are prayers of lament that furnish us with language for the seemingly unspeakable. Here are songs to name the sorrow in the company of the faithful. Here are poems that give coherent shape to our incoherent feelings in the presence of our Maker, who has, it often feels, seemingly abandoned us to our inconsolable pain. But the lament Psalms have offered us in our hour of need, they offer to all who find themselves in need, edited language to give expression to our unedited emotions. I like that ending, edited language to give expression to our unedited emotions. That's, I think about how often we do try to edit our emotions. We want to say the right prayer to God, not, but these Psalms, I mean, Corey keeps saying, that these Psalms show us how we can say anything to God.
And I like in that same quote where he says they give coherent shape to our incoherent feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I love that idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like how he uses these antonyms together.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on this quote? So one more. What we find in these Psalms of Lament is important to stress is never mere sadness. We find instead sadness before the face of God. For here, there is never mere complaint. Here, there is complaint brought to God rather than kept from God. Here, there's no victim mentality, even if the psalmist is a real victim of violence who requires vindication. Here, there is a wholly honest reckoning of pain within the community of those who seek to be wholly human, as hard as that may be, wrestling with God, not apart from God. So this, this idea of whatever we're feeling, whatever we're facing, we are bringing God into it. Any comments here?
I'm just deeply appreciating the way both of these authors are validating our bringing our sadness into the presence of God as sacred space for being sad. And I think that our inner desire when we are with someone who is sad is to try and make them not sad rather than sit with them in the sadness. And I think that Renata was alluding to this with the Psalms of Lament as a discipline, or lament as a discipline, is that willingness to allow ourselves to be sad with and for someone else, even if we were not feeling particularly sad ourselves, and that is a sacred and spiritual space to be in, and God welcomes that. And I really appreciate that truth.
Mm-hmm.
I do too. And this is actually, it's a new idea for the idea of it being a spiritual discipline. I don't even quite know what to do with it, but it feels right. Like the idea feels like it could be.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on. We're going to use Psalm 13. Psalm 13 is only 6 verses long, and we're going to explore the pattern of lament through Psalm 13. So a lament typically starts with a complaint. So Psalm 13 starts with, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me?" Then we move to a petition. Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest my enemies say, I have prevailed over him, lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. And then the lament usually ends with a resolution. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So I'm going to look at each of these parts separately. So, our complaint here, it's how long. I mean, how long is a bit of our complaint? So that we see this how long question. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? This weekend, rather than how long, I was just thinking, how much or how much more? That was my question, but it's a similar question. So the idea of I have had enough, I just can't take it anymore, and letting God know.
But isn't that what Job did? When he faced with all the losses in his life. How long, oh Lord?
So I actually did a search on how long, and so I found another examples in Psalm 89:46. How long, O Lord, will you hide yourself forever? How long will your wrath burn like fire? Habakkuk 1:2. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help and you will not hear, or cry to you violence and you will not save? Revelation 6:10. They cried out with a loud voice, O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long before you will judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? So this is a common question. When people are in pain, how long, or how much? This is okay, God, what now? Before I move on, any other thoughts related to this how long?
I think it's just a very real cry of the soul when you're faced with so many things. How long? I mean, that's so real,
I was looking at, back to the beginning. Will you forget me forever? Will you hide your face from me? All these, it's not just how long, it's like, God, you have abandoned me. You have left me. Come back. I have one other how long, but this one is a little bit different. This one is from God's point of view. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people despise me? And how long will they not believe in me in spite of all the signs that I have done among them? So we have God who's been very patient with his people. And there were other similar verses, but God is very patient. We're not, but so then we follow with a petition to God. Consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death, lest my enemies say I have prevailed over him, lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. I also looked up answer me. And so Psalm 4:1, answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. So the phrase answer me is 15 times in the Psalms, but then there's also some more times where it's, and you answered me. But so I'm not counting the answer that has already come, but just this, cry to God to answer. Another, with the more with the second part, I have Psalm 35:19. Let not those rejoice over me who are wrongfully my foes, and let not those who wink the eye who hate me. And let not those wink the eye who hate me without cause. So, I mean, in the Psalms, we have a lot of dealing with enemies, which that's not, most of us don't have a lot of enemies. I would assume I don't. But what other types of petitions might we be making here?
If we think of foes as perhaps something else besides people, it may be something that we're battling, with an illness or with a disparity in a relationship with someone you love, certain things like that. Then in that regard, there are ways that we are fighting against an idea, and we can or a feeling. So it can be very kind of torture for us in a sense.
Thank you for that, Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? Okay. Then we end with, so we've had our complaint, we've had our petition. Now we end with the resolution. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. So in this resolution, what actions do you see?
They're choosing to rejoice, and they're choosing to trust, and choosing to sing.
Yeah.
Lord.
And what are the reasons for this trusting and rejoicing and singing?
Because of what God's done in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you go through the complaining and petitioning, asking for what you need and why haven't you done it faster, and all of a sudden you come to the realization, wait a minute, you do these things. I need to be patient. I have to, it will happen because you were there for me, and I just have to be patient and remember all the goodness you've brought.
Well said. So I guess this is why I like the historical Psalms, because these remind us of all the things that God has done. So if they know, knowing those, it's like, okay, these are reminders of what God has done in the past. And, we have our personal things, but knowing God historically through his word is just another another add-on that helps us come to this point of resolution. So I was looking at just some of the remembering God's character. So the first thing it mentioned was steadfast love. And so I actually went back historically from the Psalms to see, okay, what are the things that they might have in their memory? So for steadfast love, this is from Exodus 34. This is Exodus 34. I think this is Moses after the 10 commandments are in Exodus 20. This is Moses up on Mount Sinai after receiving the 10 commandments, or in that same time period. So the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, and keeping steadfast love for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. So I like how God identifies himself, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. I mean, this is, if you are asked to introduce yourself, what would you say about yourself? And I'm just thinking, okay, God's, telling Moses who he is here. And I just like that description. Going to salvation, I went to Exodus 15. So this is the song right after they go through the Red Sea. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my Father's God, and I will exalt him. I don't know how many of you know this as a little song that Lisa's nodding. So
Yeah, we sing it in Young Life. Yep.
Yep. I have done it in teaching children Sunday school many a time. And then just remembering God's wondrous works. Remember the wondrous works that he has done, his miracles and the judgments he uttered. So, no matter what, why we are in this time of lament, remembering who God is and what he has done is an important aspect of the lament. So I like how these end with a resolution, but I also have Psalm 13 from the Message, and to me, I get whiplash reading this. So can I get a volunteer reader?
I'll read it.
Okay.
Long ago, God, you've ignored me long enough. I've looked at the back of your head long enough. Long enough, I've carried this ton of trouble, lived with a stomach full of pain. Long enough, my arrogant enemies have looked down their noses at me. Take a good look at me, God, my God. I want to look life in the eye, so no enemy can get the best of me or laugh when I fall on my face. I've thrown myself headlong into your arms. I'm celebrating your rescue. I'm singing at the top of my lungs. I'm so full of answered prayers.
So did the resolution seem unexpected or too soon, or?
Well, I don't think he's talking about answered prayers to this question about long enough. But again, like you were talking about earlier, he's going to the past and saying, look at all the times I can remember now that you did answer my prayers, and I'm just trusting you're going to do it again. I just can't see it.
I think Malcolm Guite's poem on Psalm 13 captures the. I thought it captured the feelings really well here. Come down to free us. Come as our true friend. How long? How long? Oh, do not hide your face or let me sleep in death, but light my end till it becomes a bright beginning. Place your wounded hands in mine and raise me up that even grief itself may turn to grace. Then I will sing a song of sudden hope. Then I will praise my Savior, the divine companion who drank the bitter cup and in so doing made it flow with wine, that his strong love might overrun my heart and all his joy in heaven might be mine. Then I will sing his song and take my part in love's true music as his kingdom comes and heaven's hidden gates are drawn apart. Did any of his words stand out to you?
I love that second verse. I just love that, the visual of that. Place your wounded hands in mine and raise me up that even grief itself may turn to grace.
Yes.
I think that's really beautiful.
Agree.
But I really appreciated his how long, how long.
Yeah.
It's very simple, but you know, that was just so key to that psalm.
I love that last part where he says, take my part in love's true music as his kingdom comes and heaven's hidden gates are drawn apart. That's a really beautiful picture.
Elizabeth?
Yeah.
It's Anne. I put in the chat a version of Psalm 13 that a number of us did in a Sunday school class a few weeks ago. We were considering grief as a result of the past year and a half and through COVID and how that has impacted our lives. And we this was written by a number of people, and we would just call things up, and Kim wrote them up on the board, and then she typed it up for us at the end.
Neat. Thank you for sharing that.
Yes, but it is connected to the experience of lament that we have had, or the experience of sadness and our grief in the things that we have lost.
Yeah, it was quite applicable.
Yeah.
Very, very well done.
Yes.
I thought.
So I'm going to go to, oops, there we go. Another Psalm, Psalm 6. This one's a little bit longer, 10 verses, but I still have it on one page. So can I get a volunteer to read this one, please?
I can read it.
Thanks, Ellie.
O Lord, rebuke me not in your anger, nor discipline me in your wrath. Be gracious to me, O Lord, for I am languishing. Heal me, O Lord, for my bones are troubled. My soul also is greatly troubled. But you, O Lord, how long? Turn, O Lord, deliver my life. Save me for the sake of your steadfast love. For in death there is no remembrance of you. In Sheol, who will give you praise? I am weary with my moaning. Every night flood my bed with tears. I drench my couch with my weeping. My eye wastes away because of grief. It grows weak because of all my foes. Depart from me, all you workers of evil, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord accepts my prayer. All my enemies shall be ashamed and greatly troubled. They shall turn back and be put to shame in a moment.
I just am really drawn to these images of grief in this psalm. I mean, the vocabulary about languishing and troubled, in verses 6 and 7, the moaning and all the description of the crying. I mean, it's like, this is so real, and I'm sure we have all experienced this to some extent at some time. And it's like, okay, yes, I this is how it's been. I mean, this one, I mean, again, it's talking about foes and enemies and stuff, but just this raw feeling of pain is just, expressed here. And I noted also how the appeal to God's character. Again, we talk about deliver my life, save me for the sake of your steadfast love. And then, in verse 5, for in death there is no remembrance of you. In Sheol, who will give you praise? Okay, God, if I die, then I can't praise you. You need to save me for your own sake. But again, we do have a resolution here, not quite as strong a resolution as in the other one, but it really, it's the Lord has heard my plea. The Lord accepts my prayer. Maybe not, it hasn't gone to the side of joy, but it's more like content, trusting, which to me, this one just feels more natural to me. I think this is where I could go easily. Going from, I guess on Psalm 6, the turnaround was just so soon. I wasn't ready. This one, going to trust. I can, to me, this one's just much more relatable. I don't know how the rest of you feel.
I think it's more personal. It seems to me it's more speaks to us as individuals, and the reminder that the Lord is hearing the weeping, and the Lord is hearing our plea. And I love the Lord accepts my prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reassurance. I love that.
I also have this one in the Message, but I have a reader for the Message version.
Well, I can read it again if you want. I like the Message. I really like it. Please, God, no more yelling, no more trips to the woodshed. Treat me nice for a change. I'm so starved for affection. Can't you see I'm black and blue, beaten up badly in bones and soul? God, how long will it take for you to let up? Break in, God, and break up this fight. If you love me at all, get me out of here. I'm no good to you. Dead, am I? I can't sing in your choir if I'm buried in some tomb. I'm tired of all this, so tired. My bed has been floating 40 days and nights on the flood of my tears. My mattress is soaked, soggy with tears. The sockets of my eyes are black holes, nearly blind. I squint and grope. Get out of here, you devil's crew. At last, God has heard my sobs. My requests have all been granted. My prayers are answered. Cowards, my enemies disappear. Disgraced, they turn tail and run.
So using the words from the Message, does this change any of your thoughts on this psalm?
Yeah, to me in the Message, it gets cleaned up really quickly and with no doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in the original song, you were left with hope, but wasn't like everything had been fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly what I was going to say. It's like a light bulb's turned on. And the other was more like, I've got faith that God is going to hear my prayer and his promise is there. But this one's like, all of a sudden, all my requests have all been granted. My prayers are answered.
Mm-hmm.
It's so affirming and it's so convincing.
The pictures in this, the picture language here is well, the Message is always interesting, but I mean, the Message does the Psalms. I think that it's interesting because it does keep it poetic, but it's definitely, I don't know, more raw, more real even, although this other, the ESV, flood, we still had the flooding my bed with tears and drenching my couch with weeping, but this picture of my bed has been floating 40 days and nights on the flood of my tears. I mean, it's somewhat humorous language, but it really is, you get even a greater picture of the despair and the joy.
Yeah, I think it's very visceral, the adjectives and the words that are used.
Mm-hmm. That's a good description there. We'll turn to Malcolm Guite's poem. Whose mercy wakes me at the break of day. I feel my weakness, all my bones are vexed, and all the faith in me seems worn away, as though I've lost love's memory. Perplexed by false complexities, I mime faith's part. I keep the book, but cannot read the text. Unless you come and write it in my heart, unless you help me read it through my tears, and hear me out, and hearing heal my hurt. How could I think you punished me? My fears just magnified the shadows that I cast till you were lost in shadow too. Love hears my cries and clears the shadow of my past, flinging them back before his growing light until I recognize his face at last. I think my favorite line there, my fears just magnified the shadows that I cast till you were lost in shadows too. It's just, so often in grief or fear or whatever, we are so overwhelmed that we lose God. What do you all like from here?
I like the part about I keep the book but cannot read the text unless you come and write it in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
unless you help me read it through my tears.
I just like the language of perplexed by false complexities. But this psalm, this poem just reminds us of how in times of great sorrow, it's just so easy to shut ourselves off from God and become totally inwardly focused. I think that's, at least for me, that's my natural response, is to turn inward. And these Psalms of Lament invite us to turn outward, to turn to God, and to turn to our community. These ones are this week is more personal lament. I guess it'll be 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, will be more corporate lament, but it's still, we're still going outward, going towards community through these individual Psalms of Lament. So our last Psalm of Lament for tonight is Psalm 88. This one's actually quite a bit longer. So this one is, I have 3 screens. So let's see. Lisa, can you read the first one, Renata the second one, and Sally the third one? Okay.
O Lord, God of my salvation, I cry out day and night before you. Let my prayer come before you. Incline your ear to my cry. For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draws near to Sheol. I am counted among those who go down to the pit. I am a man who has no strength, like one set loose among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, like those whom you remember no more, for they are cut off from your hand. You have put me in the depths of the pit, in the regions dark and deep. Your wrath lies heavy upon me, and you overwhelm me with all your waves. Selah.
You have caused my companions to shun me. You have made me a horror to them. I am shut in so that I cannot escape. My eye grows dim through sorrow. Every day I call upon you, O Lord. I spread out my hands to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do the departed rise up to praise you? Selah. Is your steadfast love declared in the grave? Or your faithfulness and abandon? Are your wonders known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness?
Sally, you're muted.
Oops, I forgot that. But I, O Lord, cry to you. In the morning, my prayer comes before you. O Lord, why do you cast my soul away? Why do you hide your face from me? Afflicted and close to death from my youth up, I suffer your terrors. I'm helpless. Your wrath is swept over me. Your dreadful assaults destroy me. They surround me like a flood all day long. They close in on me together. You have caused my beloved and my friend to shun me. My companions have become darkness.
So what do you notice that's different about this psalm?
There's not any hope at the end.
There's not. I think there's one other psalm that ends like this without a psalm of lament that doesn't have a resolution.
It almost is like he just walked away before like the last page got lost.
So
Maybe this is chapter 1.
Yeah.
So we know, we've looked at this. We see there's no resolution at the end, no happy ending that like we're expecting. But I want to go back and look through it. And where do you see signs of faith in the midst of this despair?
He calls out to the God of my salvation, the first verse, and then let my prayer come before you. So he's praying.
I've often said that it's all right to be angry with God as long as you continue in conversation with God. So even at the end of this psalm where he's accusing God of being the reason why his beloved and his friends have abandoned him, he still is at least in dialogue with God about it.
Mm-hmm.
And at least so far, I can't remember if the rest of it is like this. He's not saying you've abandoned me. He's just saying I'm having a hard time.
And he has had it for such a long time. The third page, I think it was, what, from my youth up. I mean, heavens to Murgatroyd. He's been in darkness for a long time, it seems.
I mean, another thing I noticed here was with this, I cry out day and night before you, the fervency of the prayer. It's not, so, he's continuing. I mean, Megan had said this, but he's continuing in dialogue. This is an ongoing crying out to God. So definitely continuing the conversation. Anything else in these verses that you want to talk about? I was kind of looking at all these references to death. My life draws near to Sheol, those who go down to the pit, like one set loose among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave. There's all these signs of death. We have another depths of the pit, regions dark and deep. I mean, this is, whether he's, actually dying, but, the feeling of death, the feeling of hopelessness. So we have a little bit of a change here. What do you see here?
He's very lonely. I mean, he just feels very alone.
Mm-hmm.
The verse 8 sounds like he's blaming God. He's saying that God has caused this heavy burden.
But again, he says every day, I call upon you. So he does consistently talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I've heard of abandon.
Yeah, I'd seen it before. I mean, I know it has to do with death. Megan, I don't know if you know any more. Abaddon is opposed to Sheol. Do you know, is there the difference or? Okay. Yeah, I did not look it up. This has been somewhat busy week. but I was thinking this verses 10 to 12 remind me of the petition we saw earlier about, this, I guess it was in, which was it in, now I'm getting confused, Psalm 6, but here, do you work wonders for the dead? Do the departed rise up to praise you? If I die, okay, I can't praise you, God. You need to keep me alive. This is for your own good. So,
Elizabeth,
yeah.
it says, used with reference to a bottomless pit, often appearing alongside Sheol, meaning the realm of the dead.
Okay, thank you, Renata.
Actually, a place of destruction.
Okay. So it talked about the pit, I guess, in the first part, but yeah. I like this verse 12. Are your wonders known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of forgetfulness?
Mhm.
That I just like that line. And here we have continuing crying out to God. I mean, now it has in the morning. So this is just this is a continual thing. This is we've already said it, but this is this ongoing conversation with God, not giving up on God, not coming to a point of praising God, but it is definitely trusting God, or you would have stopped, continuing to cry out to God. Any words here that are especially meaningful?
You wonder what it means that I suffer your terrors. Is that a reference to the previous verses, or is that, who knows, something bigger?
Yeah, no.
I am helpless.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I was just thinking about the ending. You've caused my beloved and my friend to shun me. My companions have become darkness. Mm-hmm. Just how it ends in darkness. We have this despair that ends in darkness. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and read Malcolm's poem. And then we're going to have, even though we didn't have a resolution in this psalm, we're going to have a little response. So, my Savior's words of welcome, all is well. Was that just some false dream I used to have? I tremble once more on the brink of hell. Soon I'll be weeping in its lowest pit. The grave would be a kinder place than this. The dead forget, but I remember, and I grieve for all that I have lost. The green leaves shed and stripped from me, my lovers and my friends all torn away. Just emptiness and dread are my companions now. No one defends or speaks for me, Lord. I have cried to you, and you say nothing. Empty silence rends my heart in pieces. There is no one who can find me now, for who could ever know this agony unless they felt it too? And this just echoes the loneliness of pain.
I just love the way he can take what you just read, and he doesn't, it's not like he's writing cliff notes for us to say, this is what you just read. He's taking it and he's just pulling the essence out of it in a way. He's just remarkable.
Yes. Yes, I've definitely come to appreciate poetry more.
Mhm. The last part of the last line, for who could ever know this agony unless they felt it too? That brought Jesus to mind, Jesus on the cross.
Mhm.
Wow.
And you know, it seems like he always does bring Jesus into it.
Mhm. Well, talking Jesus, I have a New Testament response. So from 1 Peter 5:6-7, humble yourselves therefore under the mighty hand of God, so at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. And I remember a song about this, really from this verse 7, cast your burdens on Jesus, for he cares for you. Sorry about the singing, but that, we're at, when we are in the pit of despair, we have a hope if we cast our anxieties on Jesus. And then Matthew 11:28-30, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So I just like to end on that thought that, even when we are in the pit of despair and we want to hide, keep everything inside, and Jesus invites us to cast our burdens on him.
Mhm.